Hey everybody, we are back for part 2 of our dragon eye drawing, and part 2 is going to be starting to add color. Now, the first thing you need to do before you add any color to this is you need to decide what colors you're going to use in each of the different areas. We want to select all of our colors first. So we've got this guide here for you to look at. Looking at all the different color schemes. Now, you can choose whatever colors you want, but you've got to do it before you start. We have to know what we're going to use. So these are just some ideas. We have this one that has these kind of purples and pinks with some greens and yellows for the eyeball or the iris. This one has blue scales with some oranges and yellows for the iris. And you can see they're not the same. There's usually a contrasting color in the eye to whatever's around it on the scales. This one does not have as much contrast in it, so we have those kinds of same oranges, but it does use more yellow here than it does out here. Same thing on here. This is all shades of green and yellow, but it has more yellow here than it does out here. So you can keep them similar. For my example, I'm going to use 2 contrasting color sets, one for the iris of the eye and then one for the scales. So for me, I'm going to be doing some different shades of green in the iris. So as I'm starting to choose my colors, I want to choose 3 different variations of the color that I'm going to use. So I'm going to start with kind of this medium green, which I really like. And then I want a lighter color too, so I'm going to choose a yellow. And then for my dark color, I'm going to go with this really dark green, which is called pine green. So I've got 3 greens, a light, a medium, and a dark. That's going to be for the inside of the eye. Now for my scales, I want them to be different shades of kind of reds and pinks and purples, so I'm going to be choosing some of those colors. So I've got a pink here, and then a slightly darker pink, almost a magenta color, and then I'm going to go with this kind of purple color as well for my dark. So I've got a light, a medium, and a dark. So on these spikes, I want to choose a different color. I want something that's going to contrast or stand out. I want to go ahead and figure that out now before I get started. So maybe on that, I'm going to use more of, let's say, this kind of turquoise green. Okay, so we're going to go with this green. I need a lighter color for it, maybe a gray, and something. Actually, I'm going to use this as my medium, or my light, and then gray, and then the dark. So that looks like a good color combination. But again, trying to figure out at least 3 colors to go in each one, a light, a medium, and a dark. We're going to start with what's called a base layer. And the base layer is the lightest color in your color set. So if I'm starting with the iris of the eye, which is this part of the eye, I'm going to use these different colors of green. I want to start with the lightest color first. So I'm going to go with my yellow first. And I'm going to actually take this yellow and I'm going to create what's called a base layer. And a base layer means that I'm going to go over the entire thing very lightly with this single color. And I'm actually going to go over the pupil as well, and I'll show you why here in just a minute. The only parts I'm not going to color, though, is that reflection where it's supposed to stay white. Anything that's supposed to stay white, the reflection and the whites of the eyes, has to stay white. You do not want to color over that with any of your base colors. So here's the base color. I'm going to take my yellow colored pencil and lightly color in all of these spaces. I'm going to be real careful to stay in my lines. I don't want to color too dark this time around because if I do, I won't be able to blend into it. So I'm just lightly going over it. And this base color goes pretty fast. It's definitely the easiest part of the whole drawing. And again, just kind of going through and putting that base layer in. And I'm going to add my force field here just to clean up that line and make sure it's nice and neat. Same thing on this side. I'm going to put that force field in. I probably should have done that in the beginning. All right, that looks pretty good. that's my base layer. Now, I'm gonna go ahead and put these colors off to the side because I won't be using them again for a few minutes. And I'm gonna grab my next base layer for my next part, which is going to be my scales. And I want my scales to have this kind of pink color as the lightest one for base layer. So I'm gonna go over all of my scales, creating it or doing it with the pink. Try to stay in the lines. These will be displayed with the black border. So we wanna get that pink in there. And since I want these little spikes to be a different color, I'm gonna make sure that I go around them. I wanna go over here, and this is gonna have these blues in it. So my base layer is gonna be this light turquoise. The only part I have left that I didn't talk about was this kind of corner of the eye. In a human eye, this area is kind of a pink color. You can make it whatever color you want. I'm gonna go ahead and make it my same as my base layer for the scales. And I'll probably end up leaving it pink just so there's some contrast in there, but you can color it whatever color you want. Again, the whites of the eye stay white, the reflection stays white. So as of this point, I have colored this entire picture with my base layer. Once we have the base layer, we're ready to go in and start making in all of the dark values. I'm gonna start with my darker color because I want it to be at the edge, and then I'm gonna fade into the jade green and into the yellow. So I'm just gonna start with my jade green first, creating that amazing force field we talk about all the time. Making sure the edge of the eyeball has a really clean line between it and the white area. So there's my jade green. Now, I need these colors to fade into each other, so instead of going this way around the circle, I'm gonna color in towards the center of the eye. And I'm gonna start to put some of this jade green right along the edge. And I'm not starting out too dark yet. I can always darken my colors in, but I can't really lighten them very well. So I'm gonna go ahead and start kind of lightly with the jade green. Gonna come around this way. And now it's gonna be fading into a lighter green. So I'm gonna make it a little bit lighter at the edge. And remember, when we do that color transition, we want that irregular edge. We don't want a straight line on this side. It's straight on this side because it's the edge of the shape. But in the inside here, when I'm gonna transition, I wanna have it kind of an irregular shape. And just like that. And I'm gonna darken this back part a little bit more. And now I'm ready to transition. So I'm gonna switch out to my medium value, which is gonna be this little bit lighter green. And from here, I'm gonna keep going in towards the center. And again, I want that irregular edge. I'm not making a line going down it. And since I already have my base layer, I just have to get this color on there until I'm happy with it. And the yellow is already there. Now, you'll also notice some of the yellow is coming through this lighter green and even some of the medium green. So it's actually blending as I go with that base layer that's already there. Darken that in just a little bit more. And then that looks really good. Now, after I finish one side, I'm gonna jump over to the other side and do the exact same thing. And since I'm right-handed, I'm gonna flip my paper over just to make it easier. All right, I've got the iris of the eye done. I'm ready to move on to the pupil. I haven't grabbed a black yet, so I'm just gonna go ahead and grab a black. I do want my pupil to be black. It really is the most realistic color in there. But notice again, I did put that base color under here, so I'll show you why here in just a second. So I'm gonna take my black. First thing I'm gonna do is clean up the edge of that line. I need it to have a really clean line, so I'm gonna use my force field and really make that line nice and clean and straight. Same thing along the top. Especially around the reflection, go around it very carefully, clean up that line, and then down the other side. And then I'm gonna start to fill it in. And I like to start out kind of filling it in lightly. So almost a gray or a dark gray right now. And then just being really, really careful to keep inside my lines. All right, now that I've got that kind of filled in with that dark gray, what I wanna do is I'm gonna go back in and I'm gonna make the edges of this even darker and then kind of let them fade and be a little bit lighter towards the middle. So it looks almost like that light is coming from the inside of the eye. So in this part, I am really pressing down hard, getting a solid, solid black. But again, be really careful not to go outside your lines. Okay, so I've left this kind of lighter area here. Now, since I used yellow as the base layer, I'm gonna go ahead and take some of my yellow and I'm gonna blend that on top to make it look even more of like that reflection of that yellow. So we have this stark white reflection and then just this yellow that's kind of showing through the black part of his eye. And there it is. All right, now that I've got his pupil and his iris done, you can see how all that blending and shading has made it look really, really nice. I'm gonna be moving on to my scales next. So I'm gonna switch my colors that I had, and I'm gonna be using my pink and my purple, my dark pink and then my purple. I'm gonna be kind of starting out the same way I did with the iris of the eye. I'm gonna start along the edge of each of the scales with the darkest color first. So I'm gonna go in here with my purple color and I'm going to go around the edge, making sure I've got a nice clean line on that scale. And I'm gonna thicken that line up and start to color in towards the middle, just like I did with the eye. We're gonna color in towards the middle. Giving it the really dark line around the edge. This is like a shadow on the edge of it. Then I'm gonna transition to my magenta color and I'm gonna let that color fade into my light pink. So I'm gonna do that color transition right into the light pink. Don't color all of your light pink. We do want some of that to show through right in the middle. Or I should say, don't color in all of your base layer. So now we have this lighter color right in the middle, light, medium, dark. And then I move on to the next scale. And I do the same thing. And I go all the way around. And then switch. Now, what you can do is when you're doing this, since we did all the base layer first, I could go in with my darkest color and I could do all the edges with my darkest color first. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that and continue coloring in all of these scales. Phew, I am done with my darkest value. So it takes a little while to do that, but now I'm gonna go in with my medium value. So switching over to the medium value, and we're gonna take care of all of those. So you can do it one at a time like this, or you can do all the dark values and then go back in with all the medium values. So here I go. Again, I'm just gonna go a little bit on top of my dark value and fade to the center. Just be careful to leave some of the lightest value showing. You don't want to cover all of it. That's kind of the reflection on the top of the scale and what gives it the 3D effect. All right, my scales are done. Looks amazing. Now, one of the things you might notice on yours is you might have some little spaces where the scales maybe didn't come together all the way. What I like to do with these spaces is I'll get actually a darker color. So since I used purple as my darkest, or actually I used orchid as my darkest, I'm gonna go in with a violet purple, which is even darker, and I can fill those spaces in and they'll start to look like really dark shadows in between the scales. So if you have a few of those spaces, you can just kind of fill them in and make them darker. And they'll look like really deep shadows. All right, and there's my dark, dark shadows in between. Now, the only part I have left on mine is going to be this kind of spiky area, and I'm gonna use that same technique again, just switching colors again to those blues. So I've already got my base layer on there. I want these spikes to be lighter at the top and darker at the bottom, so I'm not gonna go all the way around this time. I'm just gonna start with my darker color, or darkest color, along the bottom edge, and then let it fade up to the tip. And I'm still coloring up towards the top, letting it fade right into that lighter value. Now that I've got the darker color, I'm going to go in with my medium value. And I'm going to add just a little more of this light value. Make it a little more blue. All right, friends, there you have it. That is my dragon eye from start to finish with all of those values in there.